The world of digital marketing moves at a dizzying speed. Strategies, budgets, tactics, buzzwords. How can we even begin to distinguish the signal from the noise, the good moves from the bad? Take it from the team that's tripped as much as we've triumphed. We're putting our best moves in the spotlight and spilling every secret to give you step-by-step instructions to steal for your own success and digitally scale your business. This is Marketing Moves.
Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Moves. I'm your host, Ashtyn Morris, Senior Account Executive and Strategic Partnerships Lead at Vivid Front. Today, I'm joined by one of the most respected marketing leaders in the game, Mike Linton. Mike is a 5-time Chief Marketing Officer, having led brands like Best Buy, eBay, Farmers Insurance, and Ancestry. And he is the host of CMO Confidential, where he sits down with top executives to unpack how marketing actually works at the highest level. Today, we're getting into what it really takes to survive and succeed in the C-suite, how the role of the CMO has evolved into a true growth function, and what separates brands that scale from those that stall out. Mike, welcome to Marketing Moves.
Ashtyn, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you. I always joke when I talk about you to my friends and family. I'm like, Mike is my mentor, but he doesn't know he's my mentor. So this is a big moment. I'm so glad you could join us.
Well, I'm honored by that. Thank you.
Yes. So you have had an amazing career, and no one can tell us about it better than yourself. So can you share a little bit about your background?
My background, I grew up in Cleveland, went to Bowling Green, and then somehow straight to Duke Business School. Came out of business school. I still root for the Cleveland teams. I left business school and went straight to Procter & Gamble, where I was in the whole brand management function, which was fantastic. I can do laundry probably better than almost everybody listening to the show because I was a brand manager of a bleach brand. And I know a lot about laundry, and I can wash it, I can pre-soak it, but folding and ironing, that's still a little bit challenging. I did the Procter & Gamble thing for about 7 years, and then I really wanted a profit and loss statement, and I was in Cincinnati, and I'm in my late 20s or almost 30, and the only company that would give me a P&L then was Progressive Insurance. So I came back up to Ohio, back up to Cleveland from Cincinnati, stayed in Ohio, and worked at Progressive, and it was before Progressive was doing all the advertising it does today. It was, you ran a P&L, you worked with the agents, and you were, in many instances, your own actuary. It was a great job. And so I'm probably grounded in those first two experiences. And I can go on with the rest of my career, but if you have any questions about those two, I'm happy to answer them.
What were some of your favorite memories from that early stage of your career?
One of my favorite memories is the Procter training. They trained you every day. They were merciless. They would train you on writing, speaking, math, and if you made a mistake, a single mistake in a document, or heaven forbid a math mistake, they would send the whole document back. The discipline of Procter is ground into you really early, and while I didn't always like it, it helped. It framed a lot of things on how I go about business. But probably the thing I learned most there was the consumer really is in control of everything. And they would have you go watch people do laundry or make coffee or whatever to understand how they use the product. And then there was tons of studying and research and that ability to understand why the consumer does what they do and how they see you. That was very important for me. And it founded my belief that really the marketplace is the arbiter of everything. And you may have something you think is really cool. You may have a super product, but it doesn't really matter if the marketplace doesn't say so. And then the best lesson from Progressive was I wanted this profit and loss statement, and then I got it, and it ate me alive for about 6 months. You think you know what you're doing, and then you get all these things, and I also wanted the responsibility that goes with the profit and loss statement, and Progressive gave you that responsibility, and it took me a long time to figure out what it's like to just absolutely be in charge of your own book. Mm-hmm. And so those are the two lessons that kind of, I think, fundamentally got me to that point in my career. And then I left Cleveland to go, an old P&G boss got me. came to get me to go work at James River Paper, where I was the marketer and then general manager of quilted northern bath tissue, which you would call toilet paper, but we would call bath tissue, Brawny paper towels, and a couple other little brands like Gala, Aurora, and Marina. And I learned a lot there about heavy capital, unions, and I do know a lot about toilet paper. So at this point in my career, Ashtyn, I could go to a party and talk about insurance, paper towels, toilet paper, bleach, or bar soap, which
Wow.
made me a big hit at parties.
I was going to say, I bet you are the talk of the party.
Talk of the
that
party.
guy's talking about, not toilet paper, sorry, talking about bath tissue.
Bath tissue.
Yeah.
Well, I do remember Procter would send you on sales training. And they sent me on sales training in Minneapolis. And that was where you actually functioned as a salesperson for the company. I had a station wagon that I never washed in 13 weeks. And you called on the trade and put your stuff in there. And my learning, and Procter wanted you to learn this, is you think it's so great in headquarters, and then when you get it out here, the execution is a lot harder. Mm-hmm. So think through all the things that can go wrong before you put it out in the field. Mm-hmm. And that also was a really good learning.
Absolutely. That training has been foundational for your career. There's a lot that we can get into today, but I do want to talk about the role of the CMO. There is a 2026 stat from Gartner that says nearly 70% of CMOs now own a broader revenue or growth responsibility. Obviously, you saw this shift early. When did it click for you that being a traditional brand leader was no longer enough?
I will say, I'm a fundamental believer that marketing is a growth engine versus anything else. And if I tried to not go to companies that saw marketing as a line item or a cost item, in my mind, marketing, and this was beat into you at P&G, it's a growth driver of the business. So I think at 23, when I got to Procter, I already believed it from business school. And Procter pretty much, that's how they grew a lot of their businesses. They have great products and hopefully really great marketing on top of it, and that would work. And when I went from James River to other places like Best Buy, which is one of my early big marketing jobs, I brought that mindset with me. So I will say that was inculcated in me. And I also never believed that brand and performance marketing were fundamentally different. Yes, they are different ways to go to market, but they are in no way, they're both trying to achieve the same goal. So in my mind, all marketing is performance marketing money. It just has different time horizons.
Was your opinion not the norm, would you say? Were you on an island of your own with your approach to...
Yes, I was alone all by myself. No, I think there's a lot of people that believe that. And if you come out of a lot of the consumer goods companies, Pepsi, Coke, Lever Brothers, Procter, General Mills, at the time, General Foods, Frito-Lay, there's a lot of people that believe that. I think the further away you get from that, or surely when you get into a lot of B2B space, a lot of people see marketing as either an acquisition vehicle or a line item. And they will be really focused on marketing helping drive this year's results, but not past that. And I think the jury is still out for an awful lot of people in the marketplace, even though the math is pretty clear that good marketing builds businesses. I still think there's a whole bunch of people that see marketing as fundamentally just the performance marketing group, driven a lot by how you look at customer acquisition costs or CAC. Mm-hmm.
And we'll get into this more about CMO Confidential, but a lot of your episodes stem around the conversations that CMOs and CFOs need to be having to make sure both sides of the house are talking to each other. So how do you actually start to bridge that gap and turn marketing from a cost center into a P&L driver?
And I was very affected by my time at Progressive right after P&G. But my belief is the universal language of business is financial. And whether you have marketplace investors as a public company, institutional investors, private equity, or venture capital, the end view of those investors or owners or whatever you want to call them is always seen through the lens of finance. Mm-hmm. I always wanted my team to be able to speak finance. And I guess the thing I'm most proud of in my career is 14 of my team went on to be CMOs. But we would, and I always had a marketing CFO as soon as I got to be a CMO, I always had a marketing CFO. And I would want my team to be able to read a balance sheet and an income statement. And my thing is, when we leave the floor, we're talking the language everybody understands, which is finance. Marketing is a way to get to finance. It's a huge lever for the company, but it is a lever. It is not an end state. The end state is really what the company wants, and what the company almost always wants is profit and sales today, growth in profit and sales tomorrow. And that's marketing's job, is to figure out how you're doing that, not how you're just doing great marketing.
How would you instruct a marketer who wants to learn maybe the more nitty-gritty from the financial side of the business but doesn't know how to? Where should they start?
Well, I think a lot of times if you talk to the finance people in your company, they will give you a class. There's a lot of classes you can take on this. And there's a lot of books you can read. And I will say, a lot of the finance books are not that fun to read, but they are. Some of them are even really boring. But I think it is super important to understand it. And I would always want the team to be able to understand, say, when I was CMO of Farmers, you want the team to understand how, if you have a massive disaster like a giant fire or a hurricane strikes a lot of your policyholders, what that's going to do to the balance sheet and the income statement, and why the company will actually probably pivot when that is going on. And to just intuitively understand that. And honestly, I would want all my agencies to understand that as well, because I don't want the agencies showing up after there's been a giant fire going, we got this great idea, all we need is another 20 million to do it. Do you realize what's happening? And to me, marketing is a very cool job. And there's a lot of science and a reasonable amount of art in it, but it's all for a purpose, and that purpose is almost all for what the company really wants. It's not an end to itself.
Looking across your various CMO roles, what is a win you are most proud of?
Well, the thing I am most proud of is the 14 people that went on to be CMOs, but probably Best Buy was for 6 years a Camelot job. When I got there, we were about 8 or 9 billion, and when I left, it was 32, and I got to work with incredible merchants, inventory people, and service people, and we did so much fun stuff. We started Reward Zone. That was the first, I think, loyalty program, maybe in retail at the time. The merchants and the service people bought Geek Squad, and when they bought it, it was 11 people. And a bunch of us got together and convinced the board that we should expand Geek Squad as fast as possible. And they gave us a huge amount of money to do that. And I was also running the call centers. And so we exploded Geek Squad in just a couple of years across the whole country. That was a blast. And then I think that one of the other fun things at the time, Best Buy sold, I think, about 40% of the music in the U.S. That would have been, and we were really big in rock and roll, hip hop, rap, alt rock, pop. We figured out how to trade marketing for music, and so we did a bunch of deals with some really cool bands. So the Rolling Stones, Elton John, Usher, the Pussycat Dolls, all came into our commercials as part of trading.
What was a typical day like for you?
I had a fantastic team. That was 5 of my directs went on to be CMOs. Days were really varied because you could be at any minute in with the merchant seeing what was new in technology. And this was also in 99, early thousands, when everything was just exploding in the digital space, and we saw all of it. So you were always I always classified that job as you're on the front end of an avalanche. You're trying to keep up with this avalanche, and it is really exhilarating to keep up with it, but you can't ever take anything for granted because it is moving so fast. And so almost everything we did, and like I said, I had great partners. The head merchant, Mike London, is still one of my best friends, and my team was fantastic. And a lot of people I work with there were really good partners. You could come up with almost any idea and give it a try. The Rolling Stones is a very long story, but it was a long negotiation with them. They agreed to come into our commercial. It's a DVD at the time called 4 Flicks, and it's the first one that's really going to explode after the Eagles' Hell Freezes Over one. I took a crew over to Amsterdam to shoot them in Amsterdam before we had a contract signed. So I had to go to the CEO and say, we're going to spend maybe like $1.5 million, $2 million, and I'm taking a crew to Amsterdam, and we're going to shoot the Stones, and that's the only place I can shoot them if I want to make holiday. And I, by the way, I don't know what song we're getting. There's one song I really want, but we haven't even agreed on that. And I went, shot the film, and it worked, and I even got the song I really wanted.
There you go. You made it happen.
Well, the song you want with the Stones is Satisfaction, because you know that in 2 notes.
Oh, yeah.
Everything else takes 3 notes.
On the flip side, is there a loss in your career or maybe a misstep that sticks with you?
Oh, my God, there's so many. You can pick the company, and I'll give you the loss. I'll give you probably the biggest, because I've done something that hasn't worked tremendously bad at all times. I'll give you one of my favorite, just most hilarious losses, and then I'll give you a career loss. So when I was at Progressive, I had this great idea that we could actually change insurance at for high-end vehicles. At the time, Progressive was not doing its advertising. It was only like a $2 billion company. And I had this idea that we could actually insure exotic cars and that the insured would take liability. I got Connecticut, the state of Connecticut agreed to do this. I'm on the cover of the company magazine for this, which, I mean, it's like this big. My parents still think it was a big deal. But anyways, I roll out this thing with great fanfare, and it sells nothing. It doesn't sell a single policy, not one. It's like, and I'm looking at this, I'm thinking it through. It's like 4 months into it, I go to my boss, Ed Stevens, and I say, hey, Ed, I think I'm going to shut this down. He goes, Mike, I've been waiting for you to come in because we write one policy. We're going to have to keep this thing up till we cancel that policy in like 6 months or longer. So think of the money you are burning. And I learned a couple lessons from that. I learned about adverse selection and not thinking through the whole issue of design in the marketplace. The other thing, the company never punished me for that. And so it allowed me to keep thinking about taking risk. And I think that's why one of the reasons Progressive is where it is today, because they let you take risks like that. And then if you failed, they could make a lot of fun of you. It's funny. People could have a lot of fun at my expense, deserve it, but they didn't punish you from a career perspective. The career loss, after James River, I went to Remington as the head of marketing. So that's technically my first, and Remington Shavers. That was Victor Kime. I loved it so much I bought the company. I did not do my homework. It was a private equity owned business. I didn't understand the concept of an investment thesis. I didn't do my homework on the CEO. I just knew he was ex-Proctor. And I assumed it was going to be great. And when I get there, I want to run this like Progressive, which is at speed, taking a lot of risk. He wants to run it like Proctor. We didn't get along. In retrospect, and so a year and a half, even though the business is good, we're not getting along very well. And I get the chance to resign or be forced to resign, so I resigned. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And it took me a while to recover from thinking about this. But I adopted this principle of I have to take as much of this loss on me as I can possibly take. Yes, I can say he was a terrible boss, or he really didn't give me the runway, or he didn't stick to the job description. But I think what I learned then, and I didn't learn it right away, it took me a couple of weeks to get to this, was how much of this can I take on myself? And what I did was, well, I didn't do my homework on the CEO. I didn't do my homework on the investment thesis because I wanted to pitch some things that were 4 years away. If they want to sell the company in 2 years, they may not care about 4 years. I didn't even think of that. And so I decided I didn't do my homework. I didn't do negotiation on the way in of what were my decision rights. I knew what I was going to be evaluated on, but not my decision rights. And it changed completely how I interviewed. But I also decided when I have a big loss, I have to try and take as much responsibility on me as possible because maybe that can avoid the next loss. And that changed a lot about how I would interview.
So what did you do after that?
After that ends up getting me to the Best Buy gig. And I am now a little gun shy because I'm thinking I've ruined my career. I'm in Connecticut at the time. I'm not a consumer goods person anymore. I'm not really an insurance person.
It's like, who are you?
Exactly. I was like, I don't know that anybody is going to hire me for what I want. I had a bunch of consulting offers, and I got this call to go to Best Buy. Best Buy's in Minneapolis. There are no Best Buys where I live. I can't even drive to one, but I am now burned from this Remington thing. And I spend a whole day and I drive to a Circuit City, Crazy Eddie's, and I think either Nobody Beats the Wiz or Radio Shack. And if you talk a little bit, you can meet a general manager at those stores. I call up it was Corn Ferry. I call up the search person and I say, look, if I take this job, I'll be gone in 2 years because short term for these people is a month and long term is maybe a quarter. And they prevailed on me to take the interview. I went back there 5 times and in retrospect, it's insane that I was afraid to take that job, but I was. And I'm eternally grateful for my boss, Wade Fenn, who at the time was also, well, he's still younger than me. He was younger than me. But we had agreement on how it's going to work, and it ended up being a fantastic job.
That's amazing. And like you were saying, tenure, especially in a CMO position, is pretty short. The average CMO tenure is around 40 months, according to Spencer Stewart's most recent study. So what is a mistake new CMOs making in that window that immediately puts them on their back foot?
Here's what I think. I never did this, and I think CMOs do themselves a tremendous disservice when they come in and fire the agency. Because, look, if you read the job spec, you're always going to save the company. They're going outside, right, because they want to jack up marketing as a growth engine, or they don't think they're getting their value from the cost from their line item. And they want you to fix all that. You may be able to do that, but the real issue is it may not be marketing that's causing the company to not succeed or not be what it wants to be. The product could have a problem. The culture could be a risk. A new competitor could be on the market. And I don't think I ever actually fired a creative agency. But I think when you come in and the first thing you do is bring in your own agency, you have sent a message to the company, I'm going to fix whatever the problem is with my creative. And if the problem is not the creative, you could come out with the world's best creative, and that problem will still exist. Also, even if your agency is super fast and you get something up and running in 6 months, people are going to wait immediately, be camped on that for you to fix the business. My thing to new CMOs is come in and really figure out what is driving the actual business, how your consumers see you vis-a-vis everybody else in the marketplace, and then figure out what you want to do. But if you fire the agency and say, I'm going to come up with some great creative, and then 2 months later you say, no, the real problem here is our price value equation is off. We are priced too high. It's a little too late to say that. What you should do, in my mind, is study the business and say, look, here's what I've learned from consumers in the marketplace. Our product value relationship is not what it was 2 or 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. We're viewed as high priced and less performance based than competitor B. Here's what I'm going to try and do with the marketing to fix that. But I also think we should start looking at this value equation through the eyes of the customer. And now you've put yourself, in my mind, hopefully at a different level in the C-suite as well than I'm the ad guy and I brought in a new agency.
Did you always work with agencies?
Yes. Well, Procter's really big on agencies, and it's almost like agency for life at Procter. When I was at Progressive, we didn't have any agencies, but surely at James River, Remington, we had agencies. At Best Buy, we had an inside house for the creative. We also would bring in smaller teams to write from outside. Yeah, Farmers, eBay, outside agencies, and at Ancestry, we had an inside house.
Did you have a preference?
I think there's mixes to both. It really, to me, depends on who you have on the team. Mm-hmm. There's an advantage to inside is they understand the business completely, and they're bonused off the exact same thing as you. When I could, I would put all my outside agencies on my bonus plan too. Pay them less than market and then bonus them up if we made the sales number, because I want them thinking about sales, not Cannes awards or anything. The outside house, if you treat them right, you'll get great stuff. I think it's way more about how you treat the agency in general and the relationship you have with them. I was lucky to have some really good ones. But my other thing is the agency has an obligation to understand the business, not just the marketing. And so whether you were inside or outside, my goal is for you to understand the whole business and then how marketing fit into it.
Absolutely. It's a partnership. A partner has to understand the ins and the outs and not just from a marketing lens.
Everybody says that, but I think actually doing it, I will say the work I was lucky to be associated with a reasonable amount of work. But the farmers' ads, we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two, are still some of my favorites. We crowdsource those from claims. But the creatives, they would go on claims right along. So they go to claims training. They would go look at stuff so they really understood not just conceptually the business, they actually felt the business.
You have to take that extra step to really understand
I think so. Well, and I also think do you think you have an answer or do you want to join a journey to find a better solution than we have today?
Oh, I love that. You have spent years talking to top marketing leaders on your show, CMO Confidential. So before we get into what you've learned, can you share a little bit about the story of how CMO Confidential came to be?
I can. So we at Ancestry, we sold the company. I stopped working at Ancestry, and I had some pretty big gaps in my day. And somebody did a show on me for something I thought nobody would watch, and a bunch of people watched it. I told them no one will watch this show, and then a bunch of people did. And so I thought maybe I'll just do a podcast for fun. I didn't know anything about it. So I just put a little microphone in, shot this from a dining room table. I put it out there. And I did have the concept of CMO Confidential. And that was, I think it's the most misunderstood, least consistent, most poorly managed function in the C-suite. And I thought maybe I'll just talk about it with some people. So I called up one of my team that had been a CMO, and he did that one show with me. It was terrible, but like 15,000 people watched it. And I thought, okay,
it couldn't have been that
maybe
bad.
Well, you know how it is with podcasting. You look at yourself, you're like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh.
You're like, why did I say that?
Why did I do that? Like, oh. And then I just started doing it, and it ended up getting bigger. And it's completely backwards. I didn't have a plan. I just did it, and it was just fun. And then I got big enough that I ended up with a producer, and now we've got over 160 shows, but it was all done for fun.
I mean, that's the best approach. You have to do things that you're passionate about and get excited about.
A lot of times, I don't know how you feel about podcasting, but those first couple of podcasts, you think, did anybody actually even listen to the show? And,
early on. Well, actually, I was hoping some people didn't listen to me early on because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm learning how I'm doing this on the fly.
And then it's so different than if you give a corporate speech where your team will come up and go, that wasn't too bad, but that whole part you were making there, no one understood anything you were saying. No one tells you anything.
Yeah.
And it's like I teach at Case now. And when you teach your first class or two, the students just leave.
Yeah.
You have no idea if it was good or not.
You're like, was that meaningful?
That's how podcasting is, except there's not even any students to see.
Well, you're doing great. How has being in the interviewer seat changed how you think about marketing?
It's reinforced a lot of beliefs. And I guess what I will say is I think the fundamentals of marketing are still the same. The consumer, and also I think brands matter more than ever because between AI and all the attention challenges for every consumer, one of the biggest sorts is a brand because that just saves you time as an end user. I do think the job is getting harder and harder because there's more channels than ever. A couple of years ago, you didn't really have retail networks. You had social, but you didn't have TikTok. You didn't have this. And now you're going to throw AI on top of that along with geopolitical risk or even socio-political risk where suddenly you are managing things that are way outside the purview of even the company. And if you mess that up, it actually brings the train to a complete stop, whether it's the Bud Light case or some of the other ones. You're going to stop the whole train if you get it wrong. And that is, I think, an added degree of complexity in the job now, and it's only going to get more so.
Absolutely. I think people now more than ever are asking more of their brands to take stances on things. And to your point, if they don't get it right, it can tank everything that you've built.
I will say this. Marketing, to me, is always at the intersection of technology, the consumer, and the company. And staying in front of all those things at once by definition, usually your board or a lot of your company will say, well, look, you're in the front of this consumer, so surely you know everything the consumer knows. That is super hard now. You are managing tools that you can't have enough time to use all of them. And so you have to orchestrate them through your team in a way that you are bringing a full stack to your consumer in a way that helps your company. But then you have to turn around and explain it to your company and your board in a way they believe you. Mm-hmm. Because right now everyone's going, what did you do in AI? How's it going? Where are you going to save the money? Are we ahead? And I think that's just an added degree of complexity.
Are you happy you're not in a CMO seat right
I always loved the job. I will say, in general, even when the jobs were at their worst, I still thought it is so great to have this job. Today may suck, and this whole week may suck, or we are in a horrible year, but it's still great to have the job. And the pressures of the job, yeah, sometimes they can wear you out, but in general, you get to do really interesting, challenging things, and sometimes they work, and sometimes they don't. But the fact that you get to do them was almost always enough for me.
Pressure is a privilege, like Billie Jean King.
Well, yes, pressures. Well, what I always tell my team when we went in front of the board is, look, don't expect them to be nice to you. Their job is to ensure that the $900 million they gave us to spend is actually returning for them. Their job is to make sure. So the fact, all the kudos you want have already been given to us because they're letting us spend $900 million. Or $500 million, depending on the company. So let's go in there, assuming if it was your $500 million, you would have a lot of questions. Mm-hmm. We want those. We want those. We don't want to be. We're not going in the board meeting to sell. We're going in the board meeting to discuss, like, this investment, like you would with an investment advisor.
Have you had a conversation on the show that has fundamentally shifted how you think about building a brand?
I don't think so, but I will say what it takes to build particularly a startup business is a lot different than what it used to be, which is I can get someone who's really good at acquisition, and if I have a super good product, I can find the people that want to buy this, and I can create a brand almost solely through acquisition. And then that brand can get a lot bigger, and you see this a lot in a lot of the venture startups. You aggregate a whole bunch of users, and you can go back and look at some of these brands that have grown or not, but like you can look at the Allbirds success out of nowhere. You can look at a lot of things out of nowhere, and keeping it is maybe sometimes harder than building it, but the ability actually to create something at speed is probably bigger than it's ever been because I can find the audience, sell to them, and then suddenly I actually have a group of people who really like what I've built, and I can build the brand from that start. So there's a lot of different ways to build it.
If you were building a brand today, what would you do?
I'm a situational believer. So I don't have ironclad rules for how to build a brand. I think I look at what is the marketplace want, and am I delivering that to the marketplace? And then what is the best way for the marketplace to understand that? If that is big brand stuff, great. If it's social, great. If it's, I just got to acquire a core group and then extend it, great. But I think I always want the core users to get what I am selling and to lock them down for a reason and build the brand from there. But there's a lot of ways to do it. It's different if I'm selling beer or laundry or something, a laundry detergent, than if I'm selling some really specialized protein drink for weightlifters. I'm going to build the brand differently.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the marketing funnel comes into the conversation because I think historically, from a marketing perspective, we've relied on a more clear-cut marketing funnel, but things have definitely changed with things like AI. So,
do you still believe the marketing funnel exists?
I think it exists, but the framework is just a bit looser in the sense that, for example, when I'm scrolling on social media, I'm not necessarily in the shopping mode, but I might see an ad and then go shop. Like, I'm not necessarily seeking out this information, but I'm actively being marketed to it. At the same time, it's almost like the funnel is happening simultaneously at every stage, depending on where you're at.
Yeah, here's how I think about it. I agree with you. But I think the funnel it used to be a lot less porous, and now it is a completely porous funnel, which is, say I'm taking a vacation, and it used to be a gazillion years ago, yes, I'd go to the Hilton funnel or the Marriott funnel, and I'd book my room, but now I'm like, I wonder, maybe I'm going to go to Italy or whatever, and I think I want to see all these following things, and I'm going to go out, maybe I'll end up at Google Maps to look at this, maybe I'll be around here. So I'm coming in and out of that funnel at will. And that's an easy one too. But if I get a real complicated sale, I'm going to come in and out of the funnel at will. The funnel still exists because I have to be aware, I have to consider, I have to buy, blah, blah, blah. But your ability to use the funnel in any way fit as a consumer has changed dramatically. And with AI, only changes even more so.
Absolutely. Do you think it's harder now to market to people compared to when you were in a CMO role?
Yes, I do, because one, there's more choices they have than ever. Mm-hmm. Two, they get gazillions of messages sent to them. And three, attention spans are shorter. Everyone's attention span is shorter. And when we were at Farmers, we were looking at going, we got only 2 or 3 seconds to get you. So we had the bell at the beginning of the advertising, but when we were doing our social, we're like, we got like this much time to get you. And I think figuring out how to do that in a consistent way while maintaining the brand is a big challenge. And then the other challenge you have is, in some instances, you're going to be marketing to a bot. And that bot, and so you have to think, where am I putting content? And is the bot eating the content the same way as a human? Mm-hmm. And I think the answer is probably going to be probably not. And so figuring that all out, I think it makes it harder.
Oh, absolutely. We might even end up being in a world where we're crafting our marketing with
bots.
Bot first, not
Buy
customer
bots,
first.
for bots. We'll all be on Moltbot.
What do you think about the rising customer acquisition cost? I feel like, especially from a paid media perspective, it gets more expensive every single year. And if you were in a CMO seat today, how would you try to combat that?
So I guess let's talk about CAC.
Let's talk about CAC.
Let's talk about CAC. Here's what I think about CAC, which is, look, in an area of the ability to finely target, by definition, CAC will go up because my yield will go up. Let's say if I needed to target heart surgeons, maybe I couldn't find them 10 or 15 years ago except through some magazine or something else, but now I can find them. And I have a product that's really good for them. CAC will definitely go up. I think this is really a race for your analytics to stay up with your marketing so that you understand that if your CAC is going up, your return is going up with it versus you are just following a market that is more pricey because other people are better at targeting than you. I'm a hater of CAC as a single measure for 2 reasons. One, I think if you don't have customer lifetime value right and you have it wrong, CAC will kill your growth. 2, CAC assumes the funnel is always filled. But a lot of times you have to keep filling that funnel, especially if you're a small brand getting bigger. And you have great CAC. Well, yes, it's not like word of mouth is going to carry everything. It might. And you always say, look at this brand. They did it like that. But they are the exception. Mm-hmm. One of the things I really encourage people not to do is say, well, look, Facebook doesn't do any marketing, or Google doesn't do any marketing, or Amazon doesn't do any marketing. 1, they do marketing, but 2, the product is in use, is doing the marketing. Mm-hmm. It's different because they are actually monetizing the media that they are. And when people use that as an example, to me, you can't let it stand as a marketer.
Absolutely. You have to.
Yes, you can't say, well, we're at Ford, so we should be able to do it like Google. No, you shouldn't. No. People aren't going to Ford.com to just surf around. You have to get all that data yourself. So,
I think that's a key point, though, when you talked about needing to always be building the funnel. How would you go about it in this day and age to keep building that customer base?
I always think through, what is my total addressable market really? And how much of it do I have? And if I have already marketed to all of it, I have to really start thinking through, do I need a product extension, or do I have to go back and get to people that turned me down? But the concept of limitless TAM and everyone should buy chapstick or something, or whatever you want to say, you really got to think that through and say, does everyone really want to buy that? And then I look at that and I say, how much is really available to us? And let's be realistic about it. How much of it can we really get? And if we don't have all of it, why do we not have all of it? Mm-hmm. And there's two other ways I look at TAM, which is it's greenfield, meaning we've invented a brand new thing. And so all we have to do is get it done, is get exposed, or we have a better product, but we have to take share from somebody else. And I go about those very differently. But to me, I think the real thing I look at before anything is what's in the marketplace, what's really available, and if we want it, what are we going to have to do to get it? Because a lot of times, I'll go back to insurance. If you're an insurance startup and you have a brand new way to do auto insurance, say Metro Mile or somebody else like that, there's not a whole bunch of people out there saying, we don't have insurance. You have to go take this from somebody.
You have to give them a reason
You have to give them a reason to move. That is a totally different thing than a brand new category coming out of nowhere.
I also think, too, it always comes back to value. Regardless of what you're selling or what you're providing, you have to be providing value to someone. And that's where the LTV conversation comes into play. So if you were a brand looking to increase their LTV with their customers, what are some of those levers you would recommend pulling on?
So first, I'm a big believer in lifetime value. You want to make sure your assumptions are really right on lifetime value. And I have this saying, and I call it averaging is killing us. Do not give me the average customer. Give me the cohort. So an example I would give you is, let's say I run a baseball team and my average batting average is 250. This is unacceptable. We need to bat 300 to win a lot of games and make the playoffs. I can't just say I have to raise our batting average 50 points because I may have somebody that's already hitting 350. I have to look at each individual cohort in that lineup and figure out how I can get better at this. And one of the mistakes I think people make all the time is they look at, for example, Net Promoter Score or average revenue per buyer. This is a terrible way to do it because then you're marketing not to your best people and you're not actually marketing, you're marketing on average, and you should split it up into cohorts and understand why the heavy users are with you and why and do you actually want to waste a lot of marketing on people that even if they give you 100% of their share on this is only this much of the business. Mm-hmm. If you're selling laundry detergent, you want the family with like 7 kids. Yeah. Right? How
do you find them?
Well, because they are worth way more than say you. And look, we want to sell to you. One family with 7 kids is going to do literally 20 times more loads of laundry than you. And the idea that I should average you with that family and design laundry for that average is crazy. Mm-hmm. And when I look at marketing, I think, don't do the average and another Net Promoter Score. If your average Net Promoter Score is, say, 50, you can feel good about a 50. But if you look at the segments, as you say, new users, our Net Promoter Score is 4. And established users, our Net Promoter Score is 70. So we feel good with the 50 average. We should not. We should say we are burning all these new consumers and we're not going to retain them. And that's why I'm a hater of, that's my saying, averaging is killing us.
Oh, that's a hot take, but a very valid and important take.
But you watch it, and in financials, this is where I think marketers get confused because all the financials are an average. Mm-hmm. And it has to be presented to investors as an average. But those averages are built up from cohorts. Understanding each cohort and what it is actually doing and what it is actually buying and why it uses you is a really big deal.
You've operated from B2B and B2C lenses. I know sometimes people are like, oh, it's so different, but at its core, do you really think it is?
I've done a lot less B2B, so I can't say I'm surely no B2B expert. I think probably the fundamentals are still the same. I think one of the things B2B has that B2C probably doesn't have, particularly when you get into big time B2B, like I'm selling jet engines or I'm selling nuclear power plants or I'm selling to this specific group of doctors, I know my market. They are a defined thing. I can find them. I can measure them. I can talk to them. So in my mind, B2B, it's really important to have a very tight relationship with your sales force, because in a lot of B2B, you can see that market and you can measure it and talk to it. And a lot of times that market will also be a group. They probably don't send one guy off to buy all the jet engines for Boeing or whatever. There's probably a group, but there's probably a lot more you can learn about your customer there.
Struggling with digital marketing, branding, or website design? Does it seem impossible to navigate the landscape of social media, influencers, and algorithm tweaks? At VividFront, we thrive on challenges like these. When the rules constantly shift, we don't just adapt, we excel. We've cracked the code for growth time and time again, propelling some of the biggest names in e-commerce and B2B to new heights. With our custom digital marketing solutions, we don't just promise results, we deliver them. Ready to take your business to the next level? Visit vividfront.com today to get started.
I feel like we can't have a marketing conversation without talking about AI. So before I ask you a few questions about it, are you tired of talking about it yet?
I don't think so.
Good.
Yeah.
Because we're not done talking about it.
Well, because I think it's to me, it's like witnessing the dawn of electricity, right? This is probably the biggest prize in capitalism ever, maybe, is AI. And so I have been around during the digital revolution and the mobile revolution, and this just dwarfs all that. And I think the real thing about talking about AI is it's really hard to get from hype to actual thing. And I think that will be one of the biggest challenges of companies. And also you have to talk about it. Like I thought about changing CMO Confidential to CMO Confidential.ai, and maybe that would increase our valuation. But since we don't have much of a valuation, I didn't do it. But I think all the talking about it, in this year or next year, there will be you have to start proving it's working for you phase.
How do you think marketers should be leveraging it then?
Well, look, I think you're right on the front lines. It's probably you with the CIO or CTO that are on the front lines of this. I almost always had call centers with me, which is also a frontline customer interface place for this. I think a couple things I think are super important, which is you should have use cases that are contained and you can see, and you can use them to prove answers. And the idea that you can just spread AI across your whole company and it will take root, I think is not right. I think you have to have use cases that you are measuring, as many A/B tests as you can. You have to give everybody time to play with this. And I think the other thing is managing your board and the rest of the senior team, and this is going to be a challenge for everybody.
Absolutely.
Like there's no roadmap for anybody. And so what you're going to get is you're going to see people doing it, and everyone's going to say, why don't we do that? And you're like, well, because our data layer is no good. So I think you should be really good friends. If you're not already, you should be with your CIO and CTO. You should really understand your MarTech stack and what it is delivering you. And you should also have data that gives you context of your customers versus just data points. When I go back to the averaging is killing us thing, I don't want a bunch of averages in what could be the age of super personalization, because then I will have no personalization. So really thinking about that data layer and how it is then delivered is important in addition to me on the AI. And I have one other thing I would say about AI. Everyone should have some skepticism about all new technology, and you see it with the MarTech stack. But one thing, the difference between being a blocker and a savvy business person is, if you're a blocker, you just say, no, see that AI test, it sucked and it's no good. That means we're not ready for AI. I think that makes you a blocker. I think what you should probably say is, that test didn't work. Here's why. Let's try another one. If you're just a blocker, inevitably your company and you are going to fall behind.
Oh, absolutely. And I think especially in the agency space,
agencies are going to be so interesting because... Oh, keep going.
No, I think we're about to hit on the same thing, is that as people are realizing a lot of these tools can do a lot more than maybe you ever anticipated, they're looking at their agency investments even more closely. But here, our CTO, Joe Testa, he's built our own AI tool. It's Vivid Front AI. We essentially use it for everything. It's pulling from these different APIs. I'm not doing the best job of explaining it. He could. I'll have to come on and share a bit more about it.
I bet you could get him to come on for an interview.
Oh, yeah. But the point being that we have leveraged AI to its best capabilities for us to do more for our clients, because like we were talking about, agencies are coming under intense scrutiny. So now it's a new age. You have to embrace it or die. I know it's dramatic, but that's the state of things.
Well, here's the other thing I think is all this hand-wringing about you have to have a human do creative. I think that is very ill-placed, because in the end, if the creative works, it doesn't matter who did it. And the idea that AI won't do some good creative, especially if you just need workman creative and a programmatic thing that is good, it'll be fine. And I think the agencies that hold on to, God, it has to be touched by human hands, and human hands we are so special, and our creatives are so special, it could be a really rocky road for them.
Yeah, we're definitely in a unique era for agency life. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but more so at a high level. But attribution, I feel like, is such a hot topic in marketing, especially when it comes to understanding what's actually moving the needle for us. So what is your take on the state of marketing attribution?
So, look, if you could actually attribute everything perfectly, you would do it. I think one of the big mistakes people make is they think if you can't give it credit by measuring the attribution, it's not doing anything. And I think really good marketers will take all the math they have and use that attribution, but not stop there. Because the concept that if you can't measure it, it doesn't have an impact is insane.
Agreed.
This is like somebody going, I worked out for 3 days and I don't feel any stronger and I still weigh the same. Therefore, working out is doing nothing for me. And then finally on day 10, you work out and you lose a pound. You're like, this is the day. This is the one workout. I think that's crazy. I think you have to think about brands are a lot like organisms, or businesses are a lot like organisms. And there's parts of that you can measure and parts of that you can't. But you shouldn't stop doing all the stuff you can't unless you know for certain it doesn't work.
How do you become comfortable with some of that ambiguity then?
I don't think you ever really get totally comfortable. You can do, I would call it hand grenade math, meaning I'll get close. And I think one of the things is when we would do analysis on my teams, we would look over a longer period of time. Like one of the things you don't want to do is we advertise for 1 month, and look at that, nothing happened, therefore advertising doesn't work. It's like, yeah, that's like I worked out 2 days, I'm not stronger, I didn't lose 20 pounds, therefore working out is wrong. I think you have to be really generous with the test. Mm-hmm. And if you conclude it doesn't work for you, you should be really certain, because you're going to shut that tool down and take it out of your toolbox forever. And I think this fascination, particularly with CAC, it's really dangerous because it gets companies in a place where they inevitably hit the wall and they realize there's nothing in that top of the funnel to CAC. And CAC starts going up because there's just nobody coming in. And I would always want my teams to be looking at all of that. Also, what market is not coming to us and why? Because the thing about attribution, as it's done in many places, it assumes the known market is already there and you are buying it. That assumes everybody knows your product and knows exactly why they should or shouldn't buy it, and CAC is just the converter. I'm very much against that as thinking. But I will say, if you're a young company and you know the target market, CAC is a fabulous measure. Mm-hmm. But I think it's situational when you use it.
Absolutely. We have obviously listeners at various stages of their careers. So if you were talking to someone early on in their marketing career, what would you tell them is one of the most important things they can do to set the right foundation for a fruitful career?
So here's what I think. The thing you have when you're young is time that returns It's like a capital investment you make early. If you put time in early where you get good training, that will compound like compound interest. And one of the things, I ended up going to Proctor at the age of 23 out of Duke because it was my lowest offer by a lot. And I had student debt, and it's like, geez, I wore polyester suits. It's horrible.
You gotta send me some photos.
Yeah. I think I have a couple of them, and someone did take me out and say, Mike, there's a fabric called wool. You should learn about it. And I was like, really? But I took that job because I thought the training would be foundational and would pay off. And it helped me in all my CMO jobs for sure. Years down the road, Best Buy, Farmers, eBay, and the Ancestry job. But I still would lean on that training. And what I would say is early in your career, you should get the best training you can get because that's compound interest for you. And if you get really bad training or you don't get any training and you have bad habits and lack of discipline, or even worse, you don't even know how to objectively evaluate yourself, your career will be hampered by that. And you will always read the story about somebody that self-made themselves into a gazillionaire because they're geniuses. Yes, that is true. If you can do that, you should. Most people cannot. And you are going to be developed and trained by who you work with and for. And that is the most important thing you can do. And then there's one other thing. Be hard on yourself because the marketplace will be. And if you're not, if you always have a reason you didn't do it right or why you failed in this or why you failed in that, and you don't do a bunch of self-reflection, the marketplace will do that for you.
Great advice. I'm excited. I get to turn the tables on you with a question you know very well. What is one piece of practical advice you have not talked about yet, or a story from your time in the trenches that people would not expect?
Wow.
You didn't know this one was coming.
I did not. That was top secret. Let's see. I guess a story you don't know is when we were doing the Rolling Stones deal, it almost completely blew up. We had kept this thing under wraps, and it's when finally we have to break it for everything. We have to tell the board, we have to tell everybody, we have to go on, talk to all the news outlets, and everyone is either really excited by us or really mad at us because we're going to carry this Four Flicks Rolling Stones thing as an exclusive. What people don't know is I now have, at the time, we're dumping 40 million circulars into the market. The Rolling Stones are in every page of that circular. All the stores know it's coming. The board knows, the media knows. And we have 1,000 people coming to a party in New York. And my partner in this, who ran music and movies at Best Buy, we're upstate in Minnesota at a giant offsite. He knocks on the door at 11:30 and he tells me, because we're going to actually produce these discs. Well, we're going to manufacture them. They're already produced. And he goes, you know the golden disc, Mike? I'm like, yes. He goes, 2 of the 4 discs are corrupted. I'm like, and? It's 2003. And I say, and he goes, well, we can't make them. Off corrupted discs, we can't produce them. And I say, wait a minute. Get some more time. He goes, Mike, it's 2003. That's a peak of CD sales. There is no more time. And then he says, I'm flying in new discs from London. They'll be in like 10 days. And if they work, we're fine. And if not, wow. I don't know what we're going to do. And he goes, I don't want to tell anybody. I'm just telling you. It's 11:30 at night. I grab him like this. I pull him down. I'm like, you are going to tell the CEO right now. And I'm going to tell our boss that this is going to, because you know what's going to happen? We are going to, now this is in all the papers. And I'm going to drop 40 million circulars in 2 weeks. And we are not going to have the product. And I am going to be in the Marketing Hall of Fame next to New Coke and the Marketing Hall of Shame. And then we are going to both get fired.
Yeah.
And I call the team and they start working on the circular right there because they're going to try and fix it, which we realize we can't. And luckily the discs come in
and
God. They work. But I was up like 24 hours. All I did was eat Tums and take aspirin. And it was quite, and then it came out and it went platinum on day 1 and it worked. But that little behind the scenes story.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. I'm glad you can laugh about it now. I think in the moment I would have been spiraling.
Well, the team was really good, but they called up and they said, look, we can stop this printing.
Yeah.
For like, people are working all night. And
yeah, absolutely.
we can stop this printing maybe tomorrow, but then we have to go.
Yeah.
And we have 40 pages of stuff we're selling, and the Rolling Stones aren't of course, we put them on every page.
Yeah.
Anyways, in retrospect, it was really funny. And it's a great story. But I guess the point of all that is with all kinds of interesting stuff, there's always a risk. Nobody sees how fast you're paddling below the water.
Oh, absolutely. Are you ready to be in the hot seat?
I'll do my best, Ashtyn.
What is the most overrated marketing metric in 2026?
Well, CAC.
Oh, I couldn't have
CAC,
guessed.
and then you can also say some of the social metrics, which whatever you want to say, where people are just looking at views.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are overrated too.
Funniest moment from hosting your show?
After we turn off the mics, because we have the CMO Confidential has the funniest story you can tell on the air.
Mm-hmm.
When we turn off the mic, people tell us the stories they want to tell on the air but can't. Those are really funny. And then I have done so many goofy things as we've only had to edit 6 shows. 3 of those are me. Because there's a couple times I've just totally lost my place. And then it's just some of the guests, their stories, which of course I cannot repeat here, are fantastic. But the funniest on-air story was the chief legal officer or number 2 legal officer at eBay, where somebody was selling. They had gone to the Vatican and did papal mass or whatever it is, and took the wafer, palmed the wafer to knead it. So they are selling on eBay. they are selling to be a Pope. I'm not obviously not Catholic. A wafer blessed by the Pope, and this thing is skyrocketing in valuation. And so they called my friend Rob Chestnut down, and he's like, he goes, I was the final say on everything. And no, you can't sell kidneys on eBay. You can't do this. And then he's like, I look at my little book, and he goes, I'm not Catholic. And I look at the little book, and I say, Pope has given Ashtyn wafer. Ashtyn wishes to sell wafer. That is a gift. Why not? Of course. And he goes, so I go up, problem solved. And then I get an email from the Vatican that says, we are going to boycott eBay worldwide because this is sacrilege. He goes, so I changed my mind.
That is so funny.
So yeah, the funny stories, some of the funny stories are fantastic.
What makes this story even funnier is that Sarah, who produces our show, I just heard her gasp. She is our devout Catholic here. She's in shock.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Sarah wanted to bid on that thing? Is that what we're saying? It's not for sale, Sarah.
oh, that's so funny. What is your favorite Cleveland restaurant?
It's hard not to like the Boardroom or the Cabin, and I like a lot of the restaurants in Little Italy.
Oh, they're so good.
They are really good.
What about your favorite Cleveland coffee shop?
I guess I used to be on the board of Pete's Coffee and Tea, so I'm still a loyalist to Pete's, and there's no Pete's here, so I'm going to have to go with Mojo's in Bay Village.
Mike, thank you for an incredible conversation. Where can people subscribe to CMO Confidential, and what is the best way to connect with you?
Oh, well, LinkedIn is easy to connect with me, and CMO Confidential. If you type it into your search box, you should find it. I think we have 200,000 subs. I don't know. So it should show up. We'd love for you to subscribe. And also feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or any other way. And thank you, Ashtyn, for having me on the show.
Of course. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Now it's time to start making moves. Head to vividfront.com/marketing moves for exclusive marketing materials. Every episode, we add more of our greatest insider secrets to help you move towards success. See you next time.